I don't always do this, but I'm going to start today's episode with some statistics. And I have to read them because they're crazy, like real crazy. So, did you know that the average age of someone going through a divorce in America right now is 45? Not 25, not 35, not even 40. The average age of someone going through a divorce is 45. So that is smack in the middle of midlife, right? Now, in addition to that, 41% of first marriages end in divorce. Okay, so we gotten a little bit better than the 50-50 proposition we were in a few years ago. But for second marriages, that number jumps up to nearly 60%, right? And for third marriages, it's 75%. Now, here's the question nobody is asking. Why does it keep getting worse? Why, in our second and third marriages, are we even more likely to get divorced? And now I'm going to top it all off with this last statistic. Women file for divorce 66% of the time. And in some years, that number even has climbed up to 75%. So these divorces aren't initiated by men, they're more initiated by women and more in the heterosexual relationships. So, why are women leaving? What's going on? Why is it getting worse if it's your second marriage or your third marriage, right? I talk today about this. And here's the thing. Who am I? Why should you listen to me? Well, I'm Dr. Natalie Marr, and I have been a clinical psychologist working with folks for 20 years, and I've specialized with women in midlife. And I can tell you that a lot of what's happening here is psychologically driven, and people know it is. They know it is. They know that they keep getting into the very same relationship over and over, but not everybody knows why. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, keep listening. Welcome. You're listening to The Centered Midlife, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I have taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started. So those were some really fun statistics, right? And I'm chief among them because I've had myself 2 divorces. So listen, why does this happen? And why is it that women, more often than men, are seeking divorce as an option? Well, in midlife, there's a whole confluence of stuff that's happening. Women, our stress resilience is reducing as our hormones are settling into a lower level, estrogen chief among those, and how it interfaces with some of our stress hormones and how we balance stress in our bodies. So we just can't put up with stuff anymore. And it's not a joke. Like those noises that your, spouse makes where they're, I don't know, smacking their lips or sneeze funny or just whatever starts to irritate you a bit more as you head into midlife. But that isn't why 66% of women are the ones that are precipitating divorces or asking for them. There's actually new statistics, which I didn't look up today, but you can find these pretty easily on the Googler. There are some statistics that show that a woman's lifespan is actually reduced in heterosexual relationships, whereas a man's lifespan is expanded in those heterosexual marriages, I should say. So in essence, it behooves men to be in a marriage, and it's harder on women to be in a marriage. That's right. You get more years of life if you're not married. Now, this isn't directly why women are doing this, but all of these statistics in conjunction with one another, really the underpinning here is that women psychologically have found themselves in the same relationships over and over. And there's gotta be a why to that, right? I mean, listen, I went into psychology because I was continually fascinated by why do humans do what they do when they're doing it? Why, when we know better, can we not do better, right? Why would someone continue to date very similar people or marry very similar people and end at the same place where they are disappointed and not enjoying their marriages any longer? Well, my friends, there's a lot of reasons psychologically why we find ourselves in these patterns. And for women in midlife, when I've worked with them, one of the things that I notice is that those people pleasing type behaviors are patterns that were established well in childhood. The being the selfless person that puts themselves first, that makes sure there's no conflict happening in relationships, almost over anticipating, right? So there's no conflict happening. But man, the mental gymnastics that these women have done for decades, essentially, making sure that everybody's needs, besides theirs, are met so that no conflict arises. Basically, they interface with this time in our midlife where we're like, hell no, like I have no more fucks to give. And so I certainly am not going to find one to give to this spouse who is depleting me. Like, we wake up in a lot of ways. There's an awakening in midlife that the extra levels of estrogen and progesterone had really just kind of drugged us up in feel-good hormones, and we were able to tolerate it just at really, really high levels. And now we can't. And the overall impact of that is that if you do that for decades of time, that'll shave years off your life. Now, you don't recognize it. You're putting up with it. You're able to tolerate it. You've built all sorts of patterns of behavior about how to serve this family and this spouse in such a way that there's, very little conflict happening. But you're kind of the linchpin of all that. And when you stop doing it, then everything starts to fall to shit, essentially. Over a decade or more of that, you are going to reduce your life expectancy. It's going to wear on you because the psychological is the physical and the physical is the psychological. They're kind of intertwined in ways that are just remarkable. As you heard in my podcast a couple weeks ago when I talked about how there is clear linkages, correlations between childhood trauma and the patterns of behaviors that we learn to survive in that family system and later on, increased problems in midlife, increased menopausal and perimenopausal symptoms, like all of that is interlinked together. And so this is really what we're seeing. And it makes sense that if you've developed a pattern of behavior, I call it people pleasing, but that really doesn't define everything that goes into being on top of all the things in your spouse's life and in your family's life. Like, here's the deal. These women come into my office almost incensed that they can't keep up with it. And then I'll just say, well, let's just talk about that. Why don't you tell me what you're keeping up with? You're getting, yourself up and how many kids every day and getting them to how many activities? Okay. And you're married, but what household duties are you doing? What household duties are they doing? So every single day, like, how many hours go into you doing all of those things? Yeah. Okay. And your spouse, like, how much are they doing? And how much break time are you getting, or rest time? And how much are they getting? Okay. So you're doing all this for the kids and you're doing all this for the spouse. Great. And, you have a job and you're really successful, because I see a lot of really type A overachieving women in their midlife. So, these are not like run of the mill jobs. These are like CEOs and CFOs. And, even just being in middle management is super, super stressful. Holding all of that, taking care of your employees that report to you, making sure that you're over anticipating their needs and making sure that there isn't conflict and buffering that against what's above them, right? So maybe you're not in the C-suite, but you're still an integral part of this company and you've been doing that job. So you go from the job at home to this job at work, right? All day long. And then you come home again. I mean, come on. How many memes are there about the decision fatigue over what to make for dinner? And it's real. Like, my gosh, I am 100% there with you. If I have to decide what to do for dinner one more time, I might lose my mind, right? Like, okay, so then you get home and then you're doing all of that. And how much of that, is that a 50-50 proposition with your spouse, or is that a you do most of it and they do, how much, whatever. So we go through this. I mean, I literally make them walk it through and compare and contrast it, because one of the patterns of behavior that we get into that helps us to not see this, one of those patterns is what we call dissociation. We are able to actually compartmentalize and not see it all at the same time. So you're just doing the one thing, right, in your tunnel that you're doing that's right in front of you, which is super effective for stress tolerance. Super effective. It's actually a skill set that we also would teach as psychologists in the right scenario. But to do that day in and day out in a chronic stress situation where you have this much expectation at home, this much at work, this much at home again. Oh, and by the way, I also then ask them what they're doing in their communities, because you bet your bottom dollar these women are also, doing the bake sales and running the rummage sales and, raising money for something their kid is doing and like doing more of the work than their kid is doing. And like there's also a whole level of community support that these women have their hands in, right? So it's not just home and not just work. There's all sorts of levels. And then you layer on aging parents and you might be making decisions around that, or just being, having friendships and siblings and, getting just tired of those people coming back to you and asking for you to help them again and again. So this is way bigger than just people pleasing. And I don't want you to kind of leave this podcast today thinking that's all I'm talking about. Is so much more than that. But I will make these women, I will sit down with you and I will write it all down, because I know what she's done. She's compartmentalized. I can do this between 8 and 10, getting up, getting ready, getting other people ready, getting us out the door, getting us to the places that we need to be, and myself getting to work, getting settled in and starting. I can do that. And then once that's done, boop, that's out of my head. Goes into like a container. I lock it up. I put it over here. Then I'm doing the next thing. I'm doing the work thing. And I might even compartmentalize parts of that. I do a little bit, in the morning shift, and then I have lunch, and then I do a little bit in the afternoon shift, and I get myself ready. And then all of that's done, and I wrap it up and I put it in its container and I put it away. Then I'm headed home. Then I'm in my next shift of doing whatever I'm doing, right? But I'm not putting together that I did it between 8 and 10, and I did it again between 10 and 5, and I'm doing it again now between 5 and 8, and whatever, right? Okay. So you get the picture. Once you write it all out and I make you say it in a full sentence, that I expect myself to do this and this and this and this. These ladies are like in tears. And I'm not kidding. This activity, it really like brings it to the forefront. Like, I expect myself like reasonably to do all of this. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. And that's just the macro level of like breaking it down into the tasks of your daily life, right? That isn't the subtleties of, and today is a day that, my teenage daughter is very moody and very much in my face. And everything I have said to her now, she has back to me, right? Or my spouse had a bad day at work. And so even more needy for my attention while I'm doing all of these other things. Rightfully so. And I would love to give that to him. And the not even distribution of what we're doing in the home means that I don't necessarily have it to give, right? So this is a pattern of behavior that started early in your life, and likely early in a marriage, but you have not broken those habits, and you bring those habits to the other relationships. So it's not as simple as, why am I attracted to the same kind of person? The real question is, why am I doing the same things with this person that I did with that person? Because that's the stuff that's not working for me. Sometimes it is also about the person. I don't want to, I don't want to bulldoze over the fact that there is some reality to we get attracted to the very same people over and over as well. But sometimes that's also about the cues that they're giving us that make us feel it's familiar. It's familiar and you know where you'll fit into that. You're going to fit into that with this pattern where you have this overachieving idea that it is reasonable for you to cook and choose every dinner from now until eternity. And that you do that within the landscape of also being responsible 80% of the time for all the child rearing. And by the way, you're going to go to a job during the day that most people, if that was all that they had to do, would be so much that they'd be stressed and sitting across the couch from someone like me. But you should be able to do that in the middle of all the other things that you're doing in your life, right? Fresh bullshit, my friends. What slice of hell have we walked into? Why? Why do we do these patterns? Well, in the courses that I have online at learntoloveyourstory.com, I'll break this down into 5 different steps. But the first is self-awareness, the second is self-compassion, and the third is something I call bucking the system. You have to get through the skills of building a compassionate self-awareness, which is what those first 2 courses are, to really be able to reckon with where the hell did these patterns come from? And how the hell do I buck this system? Because ain't working for me, right? And that's the work that I love to do with women. That's the work that I want to do. I want you and I to stay curious together about how these systems, these patterns of behavior have just kind of insidiously shown up in your life. And they are the water that you're swimming in, the air that you're breathing. And the idea of stopping doing that will bring on a sheer panic for you. I promise you it will. So I had a client the other day and we were talking about an issue that was showing up at work, actually, where, because these patterns, my dears, these patterns, they are not just in our marriages. It is not just those divorce statistics where this shows up. But they were in the middle of just a mucky situation at work where, they had put in like 10 to 15 years. I guess I don't really know off the top of my head how long she had been at this job, but a good investment of a decade. So a minimum of a decade. And there had been just a complete turnover in the leadership at this place. So there was no like allegiance to the wisdom and the knowledge and the roots that this role she had for the company. Like it was rich with awareness and understanding of if we pull this lever, this is going to go down. And if we pull this lever, this will come up. But if we don't do that in the context of also helping our employees with this and this, we probably won't be able to pull it off. We've never been able to pull it off. In fact, I can give you this example and this example of when we couldn't pull it off. But that just really wasn't respected or understood in any way. And they were working so hard to get that information across, and it just wasn't being received by this new leadership group. So instead of going direct, they had tried direct. So instead of going direct, they now were working with people underneath them that reported up to her. They were working with that group to see if they could make the changes kind of implicitly, like make the changes within their little sphere in middle management that would actually work in the direction that leadership was wanting them to work towards, but wasn't listening to, if you do this lever, but you don't do this with employees, it won't work. Well, it worked, right? Like they did it. They got it fixed. And guess what happened? Somebody underneath them got promoted, right? Great. Actually really happy for that person. They had been supervising them for a long time. This lady had been supervising this, person for probably 5 or 6 years. So she was actually really happy. And yet they themselves, this client of mine, were given an ultimatum, is how I would say. They were told, so we have a role for you. We're going to call it a lateral move, but it's really a demotion. This person's actually going to be over you now. And there was like a dwindling of that role. So it had like a timeline on it. And so the hope was like they would do this role and then they would laterally move again to another role. So essentially getting kind of worked out after having solved the problem, but not directly because the leadership wouldn't hear it. They did it indirectly through these other people that were direct reports. And the thanks they got was a pink slip, essentially, right? Devastating, just absolutely devastating for this woman that I've worked with for a while now. And I mean, it took a while to unpack all of that, but there was this moment where, I have a lot of rapport with her, and I sat across the couch and I said, do you want me to tell you the pattern I think I'm observing that led you here? And, she was like, of course, Dr. Natalie, tell me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you, but I'm also going to tell you that you need to show up with your compassion for yourself, your self-compassion, right? We're going to make you aware of this, but it has to be compassionate awareness, because when you hear me say this, I know with the skills that you and I have built together, you're going to recognize your own participation in your suffering, and you're going to want to beat yourself up about it. And I don't want you to do that. I just want this to be a learning moment that helps inform and bring wisdom to what you want to do next, right? Lights a fire under you for what you want to do next. Okay. Dr. Natalie, I'll listen. What is it? What did I do? I was like, wait a minute, not very self-compassionate. Please be more self-compassionate. But then I shared with her, I'm like, I've seen this pattern of yours, right? So it's all is in service to getting the job done and being the team player. I think in her family life, I would say it's not like being a team player, but making sure the family flourishes. But I'm like, it has this codependent flair of wanting to see a certain outcome, right? And when they don't do it, you figure out a way ingeniously to get it to happen, because what you're playing for is reduced conflict overall. You want it to get fixed. You don't want it to blow up. You don't want to have to deal with the discomfort of the blowout when leadership said, I'm going to pull the lever, even though they hadn't set things up right with employees. And it would have been a shit show. And that's fine, because that was their call to create a shit show. Even though you knew it was coming, wasn't your call whether it happened or not. But you interceded in this nature where you're over identifying what the problems will be to reduce the conflict before it ever happens. And I've seen this pattern in your family stuff when we've talked about it, and in your marriage and with your now adult children, that you're fixing problems they don't know they have yet. And this participation, this pattern, causes you problems. It creates a pink slip later on down the line in a way, right? I mean, this is also a woman that we've talked about. Will her marriage last? Where she and her spouse are at this point is they will be able to proceed in midlife in this marriage if it's a new relationship. But the old kind of relationship they have with these very patterns of hers are never going to serve them. They're going to serve resentment. They're going to result in one hating the other, but they aren't going to help them. So they have to proceed with their couples therapist doing other work to come out the other side of this in a brand new relationship that they both feel invested in, but it can't look like it has all the way up until this point. So I share this with her, and she very somberly is like, I absolutely see what you're saying. And I hate it that I didn't see it while it was happening. So we backed up and talked through. That is the whole point of compassionate self-awareness skills. And it's the whole point of like being in the practice of them always. One of the self-awareness technique, like skill building techniques that I teach is mindfulness. And the reason for that is being aware of one thing at a time, but wholly aware of it. Not mindless, but mindful, right? Not driving, but being in your head or on the phone and not realizing you just drove 20 miles, but mindfully like naming everything you're seeing and experiencing the drive as you're driving. This is a part of the brain in the medial prefrontal cortex that then like it beefs it up, right? It's like weightlifting, you if you don't have the resistance of the weight, you don't build the muscle. If you don't do a mindfulness activity, you won't build the muscle neurology, the neurons that you need to be able to stay aware in every moment. She had created a dissociative state where like it was better to reduce the conflict, and she wasn't even telling herself anymore that that's what she was doing. She just did the next thing, which was, well, if they won't listen, then I'll find another way to get this done. And then the other way was to help this other person. It was actually more than one person that reported to her, but the one person ended up promoted because they kind of led it. Like she just got them to figure it out, doing for the leadership what she had asked them to do with employees. She just went ahead and did it without telling them. And by design, then she is not part of that solution. The person that did the work looks like they are. Leadership knows nothing. And it really wouldn't matter if somebody had told leadership that she had done it. The manner in which that happened was very codependent. It's very behind the scenes. It's controlling and manipulating things to go in a certain way because you know better, you think it's going to work better, and not allowing people to fail, right? Not just letting the conflict of they messed up. Leadership didn't see it. Leadership didn't listen to her. Leadership didn't appreciate the wisdom that being at a place for 10, 15 years brings. They didn't wanna. That's fine. That's on them. That's their quarter, going down in profit, not yours, right? You're a cog in that wheel, but you actually were greased and told them what to do. They mucked it up, not you, right? And so we really kind of unpacked, it's okay to stay aware, to keep building your awareness skills. And one of the fifth step really is about rinsing and repeating. It's a growth mindset. So it's like believing that at any given time I could learn more. So yeah, maybe I've gotten better in my mindfulness skills and being self-compassionate in several areas of my life. But if my psychologist tells me this is a pattern where you created this, you designed your own pink slip, you wrote it, and here's how you wrote it with this pattern of behavior. Holy smokes, right? Holy smokes. Yep. I got to swallow and just understand and be flexible in my thinking that I can't catch everything all the time. I can build my awareness skills, but I'm not, sometimes new things will arise. And truly the work I do with people, over time, the skills are there. And with each new, discomfort in your life, it's an opportunity for you to grow using those skills. It isn't a fix-all that like I could have you come in and you're on your third divorce and you want to know why you're doing this. We can unpack that. I can figure that out with you. I can give you some ideas. You're the expert in you. You'll see where that fits with your life. And it won't fix all relationships all at once. It's not a one and done kind of a thing. It's a set of skills that allow you to flow and ebb in your life in such a way that you'll start to see those patterns and where they're showing up, right? Now, if you're somebody that during this podcast today, you're a woman that lives in Minnesota and you have resonated with any part of what I've talked about, then here's my suggestion. Look me up on nataliemarcounseling.com because I do have a small private practice. I do online, I do in person for people in Minnesota. And this is the bread and butter of what I help women in midlife to unpack is where are these patterns of behavior that are not serving me? How insidiously have they gotten all wrapped into what I do, even though I don't want to be doing it? How do I back my way out of that, right? I love helping people through this. And I love it because as a woman in midlife myself, I am constantly running into, oh, damn, there's my pattern that doesn't serve me. I am not 100% out of my woods yet either. I've recognized how I found myself in 2 marriages that didn't work for me. I've shared a ton about it on the podcast. Chief among them was that I also would just put my head down and do the next right thing, compartmentalize stuff, and not be looking at what was happening over here. In pursuit of let's reduce the conflict, let's make sure that everybody in the family is getting their needs met at my expense, at my own self-betrayal because I'm not taking care of me, and then hope that everybody's going to be appreciative of me in the end, that they're going to notice that I did that they're going to congratulate me for doing that. And I got resentful, they didn't see it, but it was by design. Nobody was noticing me doing that. My ex-husbands were not noticing me doing all of the work and all of the heavy lifting in managing household and managing, kid rearing and not making a big deal out of it, but still having time for them. But really, what I was doing was depleting my own energy. I was getting burned out. I was emotionally exhausted and then resentful that they didn't appreciate all that I was doing to hold up these relationships. Girl, if they don't know you're doing it, how would they know to thank you? Right? If your kids don't appreciate you, it may be that you're doing such a good job of making their lives easy. They don't know that there is a world where you're not doing all of that. The expectation, that's the norm, right? If you want them to appreciate extra details that you're doing, give them choices. Say, hey, hon, I hear you. You have a book report due that you chose to put off until 2 days before it was due. So you want me to sit down and do all of this with you. I am 100% going to do that. Here's your choice, though. If I do this, I will not do this. Laundry for the week. This is 2 hours of my time. I will give it to you. Then I can't give you the 2 hours of time for your laundry. So you're going to have to find time to figure that out for yourself, right? I say things like that and women just cringe. They're like, oh my God, Dr. Natalie, I get it. I'm like, are you doing them any favors by not saying that to them? You're setting it up. I mean, let's be real. If they're female children, you are setting it up, showing them, paving a path for, there's always an extra 2 hours you can give your kids. But sometimes there really isn't an extra 2 hours. Like, it's going to come out of your sleep. Certainly it's coming out of your self-care. You're betraying yourself somewhere to come up with those 2 hours over here. And so it's okay to let your child fail a book report, because God knows in the public school systems these days, they're not failing the grade entirely, but it's okay for them to have that discomfort of a lower grade based on choices they made to put it off. Because I'm guessing you also were nagging them about it. And I wouldn't even call it nagging, reminding them, hey, isn't there a book report coming up? And if you weren't, their teachers were. So don't, be all worried about it. Like, this kid knew and decided not to do that. And it's okay for them to fall in their own consequences. These are those codependent behaviors where we allow someone, to do the naughty, bad things. We make up for it so that there is no conflict in our world because we don't like conflict. I mean, everybody to some level is conflict avoidant. It feels uncomfortable. Nobody really wants it. But there's this codependent tendency that we've culturally been taught as women to do, that it is our job to serve and be in that position to make sure they don't fall. No, it isn't. It's your job as a wife to make sure that you have enough energy to stay and be a wife that's committed to that person. If you're doing all the things and not telling him that you feel like it's unfair that he doesn't do some more things, you're not helping yourself and you're not helping him. If you as a parent, your job is to make sure that these kids become good adults and not assholes, right? Well, guess what? We make bad choices as humans. And isn't it a better place when they're kids in your house to let them fail, where they have a soft landing with you, than if you let them fail when they're adults and have no idea what it feels like to have ever failed? You're doing them no favors, right? But this is a pattern that most women have insidiously created in their life, insidiously created somewhere in their nervous system. It all, fight or flight, all alarm bells going off as soon as they gain whiff that somebody might be falling based on a decision they made, right? And that is a pattern that definitely feeds into the statistics that I talked about at the start. The statistics of 66% of women precipitate talking to their spouse about divorcing, and that the rate of first divorces is in that range of 44%, and the second in the 60%, and the third in the 75% range, because we're still doing this over and over in new relationships. Now, if there's also an element of, and I'm dating the same guy, please come talk to me because I'd love to help you with that as well, which is its own phenomena intertwined with this one. But for women in midlife in general, it's this, selfless, I have to be the one that's the bedrock of this whole family system and my work system and my community system, wherever I put in my help, right? With my parents that are aging, like I can't just let them fail at aging. Like I can't just let them be out there. I'm going to have to intercede, but you're not taking anything off your plate anywhere else. Like you're just going to start to be the assistant to two elderly people and you get that time from where? Like what? Like this is that underlying pattern that most women are in that really needs to shift, because if it doesn't, once your estrogen starts to go down and with it, all of those stress hormones and stress resiliency factors are lessening over time, and you're needing to learn a new version of you that can't deal with all the things that are coming at you as well and won't be able to at that high capacity ever again. It'll be a lower capacity. You'll still be great. I promise you, still have great stress resilience, but you're not going to be drugged up on estrogen and all of her sisters in your hormone system that allow you to just put up and put up and put up with everything coming at you so that there's no conflict and that everything gets done. And it's your responsibility to be more than it is other people's to make sure all of that gets done. No, it's not. Let people fail, sister. Let people fail. Let people figure it out. If it's your kids, I get it. Like you have a little bit more responsibility for kids than spouses. But even with your kids, give them choices. Tell them where they can fail, right? I'll do this or I'll do this, but I'm not doing all of it because guess what? I am also only in a 24-hour day. And if I do 2 hours here, I have to take it from someplace else. And if I'm doing this for you, then I'm going to take it from a place that I give to you somewhere else. You choose which it is, right? Let them fail. Let them fall. Stop being the one that keeps reducing the conflict for everybody else because it's not helping you. And it's not helping them. And these patterns in relationships will continue to cause you distress and mental health issues moving forward. So I hope if it has resonated for you, you're hearing something today that has helped it click for you, that you might start to do some of that compassionate self-awareness work for yourself so that you can start to buck the system in your little corner of the universe and start having that centered midlife that you desire, building that self-worth from the inside out. Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these two crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME, home, to 741-741 to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. midlife.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.